She stabbed her boyfriend in the eye with needles because he was looking at other women. So this happened in Florida, where 44-year-old Sandra Jimenez lost it after her and her boyfriend of 8 years were arguing about him looking at other women. But on this specific Saturday night, when the couple arrived home, Sandra attacked him when he went to lay down. She allegedly jumped on top of him with 2 syringes in her hand and jabbed him in the eye. And apparently these needles were meant to vaccinate their dogs against rabies. Sandra was then found sleeping in her car and was arrested and charged with felony aggravated battery. Can we start normalizing breaking up with our partners instead of trying to kill them?
Let's talk about the Arcadia tapes. In 2001, in Arcadia County, Ohio, a teen named Calvin Dim went missing on his way home from school. This was really unusual at the time because Calvin was actually a pretty well-accomplished athlete and he was very tall for his age, so whoever did overtake him and abduct him was either a larger person or a group of people. So for like weeks, this investigation goes cold until a VHS tape is mysteriously found at the doorstep of his parents' house. The VHS was compiled of various different clips of unknown people in different masks who were just staring into the camera. But there is one clip in this video that had the words Cal, short for Calvin, edited into the VHS. This was pretty definitive evidence for the police that whoever made this video either knew where Calvin was or they had him in their possession. Police would end up finding this frame, which showed a person in a black tarp, presumably with their wrists and ankles tied. Investigators believe this could be Calvin, and what's even eerier is they think this was shot in the woods behind his house.
This sweet little peach is 47-year-old Lori Drew. When Lori filed the police report, she told the officer about their neighborhood dispute. In this report, she admitted to being actively involved in the Josh Evans scheme. She told the officer that she felt this incident did contribute to Megan's death. She said that she did not feel guilty since at the funeral she learned that Megan had previously tried to end her own life. This was not true. In January, Kurt and Lori Drew filed another complaint against the Myers. Apparently, as Ron drove by to go to work, he yelled out the window to Kurt, "Are you going to kill somebody else today?" Can you blame him? I would have done the same thing. They also accused him of performing a lawn job on their yard, but Ron denies this. Also wouldn't blame him. The Myers were advised by police to stay quiet about what they knew. But ultimately, the town did realize what happened. Let's just say the Drews became the most hated people on the block. It was ultimately determined that no charges would be filed against the Drews. Tina and Ron were absolutely furious about this. They felt that the Drews should be held responsible for what happened to their daughter. Since Megan's death, sadly, Tina and Ron have divorced. Tina gave up her career as a real estate agent, and in December of 2007, she founded the Megan Meyer Foundation. She's made it her life mission to go around the country speaking to kids about bullying, both online and in person. It is her goal to make sure that other parents don't have to deal with the hell they've lived through. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988. This is the crisis lifeline, and people are there to help you.
Graves that you won't believe actually exist. This heartbroken mother decided to put a sandbox in her son's grave, and now every day his older brother plays in it. Before this kid passed away, he told his dad that he didn't want to be buried because there would be no lights underground. So they ended up putting a window in his grave. A mourning mother who had lost her daughter wanted to make sure that her daughter was never alone, and storms really freaked her daughter out. So she built an underground tunnel to get to her grave, and the mother would go down to her daughter's grave to comfort her.
This is the inside of the home where 4 University of Idaho students were brutally murdered. The crime scene has been preserved for more than 2 weeks now as investigators sifted through every single inch of this 3-story home looking for clues. Daily Mail has obtained exclusive photos of the site of this quadruple homicide, and the house really just looks frozen in time. The off-campus residence has been described as a party house, and by all accounts, that's exactly what it looked like the night of these brutal murders. There are red Solo cups set up for a beer pong game, an empty bag of popcorn, dirty dishes, a half-drank iced coffee. Honestly, it's all a bit of a mess, but that's exactly what you would expect to find in an off-campus house with 5 college students living in it on a Saturday night. Now, if you focus right here you see a red little piece of tape. That's an evidence marker, and those are scattered all throughout the house. So far, 113 pieces of physical evidence have been taken by investigators. What's also interesting here is what we don't see, which is blood. Based on early photos of the house, there was so much blood in one of the bedrooms that it was literally seeping out of the home through the foundation. But based on the images of these common living spaces, there really doesn't seem to be anything there that would have indicated this very brutal crime.
Unsolved cases that keep me up at night. On January 16, 2014, a group of 4 friends were playing a game of dares. One of them was dared to go into this cornfield that was rumored to be responsible for the many disappearances in the area. The friend agreed, following the rules of the game, and ventured into the cornfield by himself. For what felt like hours had gone by, the 3 friends had lost track of the man and were starting to get worried. Too afraid to go on themselves, they contacted the police, and the police showed up after a while and searched the area. They searched and they searched and they didn't find any trace of the guy. But they did find his phone, and after going through his phone, they found the last photo captured before his disappearance.
23 of the 37 emergency medical staff working on Gloria Ramirez fell ill. 5 were hospitalized and nobody knew why. Ramirez was rushed to the emergency care unit of Riverside General Hospital on February 19, 1994. She was suffering from late-stage cervical cancer and in critical condition. When nurses removed her shirt to stick on the electrodes for the defibrillator, they noticed a greasy substance on her skin. And her breath had a strange floral garlicky smell. When they took a blood sample, her blood smelled like ammonia and had strange small yellow particles floating in it. After making these observations, nurses began fainting. Medical staff were feeling faint, nauseous, passing out, and becoming partially paralyzed when they'd attempt to work on Gloria. Sadly, Gloria Ramirez did pass away that night, and news outlets began calling her the Toxic Lady. Subsequent autopsies revealed nothing that could have made the medical staff so sick. And because there was no obvious cause, officials ruled it to be a case of mass hysteria. This was a slap in the face to the staff that had suffered real physical maladies, like nurse Julie Gerchinsky, who had suffered avascular necrosis and was on crutches for months. Later, another theory was proposed that a substance called DMSO could be to blame. It's possible Gloria was using DMSO as a home remedy and topical pain relief, but it's worth noting that her family says she didn't. Exposure to oxygen and shocks from the defibrillator could have converted the DMSO into DMSO4, which is a neurotoxin. For all the details of this mystery, listen to episode 151 of my podcast, Night Classy.
Crazy coincidences you won't believe actually happened, Part 2. In 2018, in Camptown, Pennsylvania, police discovered a body wrapped in black tarp within a creek. As the investigation unfolded, reporters arrived at the scene to discuss the events. One journalist encountered Matthew Haverly, who lived with his mother beside the creek where the body was found. During the interview, he commented this.
Sad to say that that's someone's either daughter, mother, whatever, both.
Take note of that statement, because the police later identified the body as Matthew's mother. His remark about the body being somebody's mother now seemed highly suspicious. So the authorities searched his property and found an identical black tarp in his shed. Matthew was later arrested and convicted, facing 3.5 to 14 years in prison.
Never say this out loud or you will die. There's a cursed Japanese poem called Tomino's Hell. And supposedly if you read it out loud, you will die or be cursed for life. Now you can read it in your head. This is where things get crazy. A man named Suji Terayama decided to make and direct a movie based on the poem. Exactly 1 week after the release of the movie, he suddenly dropped dead. By the way, y'all, I asked y'all to name our new baby, and the highest voted name was Steve. So I guess when this guy hatches, his name will be Steve.
And since we got this baby together, you do owe me child support.
Now this other story is also crazy. There was a schoolgirl that was dared to say the poem out loud. Look, you got friends daring you to do stuff like that. You need to get rid of them. Literally 1 week after doing the dare, she suddenly dropped dead.
Woo, look at that, baby. Look at that. Sheesh.
I flashed the poem somewhere in this video, but I'm telling you, if you find it, don't read it out loud. Or I'm gonna come to your funeral and tell everybody it's stupid.
This is maybe the scariest urban legend I've ever heard, and it ended up being true. Back in the 1970s, there was this terrifying fun house in Long Beach, California called The Laugh in the Dark. And there was always this urban legend that all the mannequins inside were fake, except for one. Also, mind you, this is what this week's episode is about, so if you don't want spoilers, just listen to the episode. This urban legend came to be because there was one mannequin inside that just looked wrong. All of the other ones looked fake, but this one in particular looked way too human. And a bunch of the kids also said the area that the mannequin was in just smelled really, really bad. So a few years go by, and one day a film crew comes in and is using Laugh in the Dark for a film set. The director's lining up a shot, and he just doesn't like the way this one mannequin looks in frame. So he goes over to a crew member and he's like, hey, can you just move this out of the shot? So the crew member goes over and starts moving the mannequin when its arm pops off. And inside of the mannequin's arm is human bone. The kids had been totally right. The mannequin was a mummified body. There's so much more to this story, like who the person was and how they got there, and I talk about the whole thing this week on the episode.
What is the Siberian dancing lady? So you've probably seen this very eerie viral video of a woman dancing in the streets. The video allegedly depicts some kind of entity known as the Siberian dancing lady. According to some urban legends, if you look directly into the eyes of the Siberian dancing lady, apparently she will possess you or attack you or something of that nature. Side note, this is actually why you keep seeing those sorry for looking into your eyes comments. They are because of the Siberian dancing lady. The Siberian dancing lady is apparently known to jump in front of cars and dance in a very entrancing way that doesn't seem human-like. Now, there have been many reported sightings of this dancing lady, and they're all very, very creepy and very, very eerie. But so far, I don't think there's actually been any kind of report of someone being possessed by the Siberian dancing lady. So the part about her possessing you is probably made up. But there are so many videos of this dancing lady all over the internet that I personally believe she is a real thing, but we just don't know exactly what she is.
TikTokers who became murderers PT.1.
On May 27, 2018, this man was pulled over by a police officer because he had a broken taillight on his vehicle. When the officer approached Stuart Weldon's vehicle, however, he looked in the back seat and noticed that there was a woman back there tied up, bound and gagged. She somehow managed to scream out that she had been kidnapped, and the officers placed Stuart under arrest. Upon being interviewed by the police, the woman then claimed that Stuart had held her captive for an entire month. And during that month, he had tortured her, beaten her with a hammer, and repeatedly assaulted her. She was then treated for multiple injuries, including a broken jaw, stab wounds, marks from being hit by a blunt instrument, and even a leg infection. After Stuart was arrested, however, his mom called the police and stated that she had noticed a foul odor emanating from Stuart's home. And after police obtained a search warrant and headed to Stuart's house, pictured right here, they were shocked by what they found. In the basement of the home, which Stuart shared with his mother, they found the decomposing body of a woman. They then searched the property and found another body under a tarp and another body in the garage. These bodies belonged to 3 local missing women. 26-year-old Kayla Escalante, 34-year-old America Lydon, and 47-year-old Ernestine Ryans. As it turned out, Stewart was a career criminal who had been arrested 14 different times in the past. He had been arrested on charges of assault, of assaulting a police officer, of burglary, of fleeing from the police. So it was very clear that Stewart wasn't a very good man. But like I said, no one could have expected the discovery of those 3 bodies rotting in his mother's home that day. As it turned out, Stewart had kidnapped these 3 women at different times, held them captive in his torture room in his basement, repeatedly assaulted them day after day for extended periods of time. Then when he had gotten sick of the women, he had murdered them and buried them there on the property. Thankfully, Stewart is serving 3 consecutive life sentences, meaning he'll never see the light of day outside of prison again. But I can't just help think about how crazy it is that him being pulled over for a broken taillight was the entire reason why this entire story broke. And if the police officer hadn't pulled him over that day, then those 3 women could possibly have never been found.
Hush, 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 here comes the boogeyman. Don't let him come too close to you, he'll catch you if he can.
There's a big conspiracy about who the real victims are when it comes to the riverfront brawl in Montgomery, Alabama, and I'm gonna expose it. And guys, make sure and click the plus sign, sound up in the comments, tell me what you think. I'll let you look and we'll discuss.
A woman has been hit with a folding chair, and the internet is laughing. We are the problem. I just want to take a second to say that I think that what happened was egregious, and I think that it should be the highlight nobody is talking about. Nobody wants to stop and really reflect and think about how terrifying and traumatic that it must have been to be in that situation. Like, can you guys really just stop for a second? Stop with the jokes, stop with all the BS back and forth, and just really take a second to think about how difficult it must have been. How terrifying it must have been to be that damn chair. That beautiful chair is minding its business, doing its job, and the next thing you know, it's hitting something useless in the side of the head. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's thinking about how that chair must feel right now to know that there's a gigantic dent in the place that should have been for sitting, and now it's for thinking. I think it was Martin Luther King who once said, that a chair is the greatest gift a man could have.
What do you guys think now that the real victim has been exposed? Sound up in the comments and click the plus sign. I've got more.
What you're about to see is the last video of Jaclyn Elquist, just hours before she was mysteriously found dead at the bottom of a garbage chute in a luxury condo building in New York. This is 24-year-old Jaclyn. She disappeared on November 30th of this year after leaving a holiday work party in Manhattan, and the details surrounding her disappearance and how she was found are strange. She was last seen getting into a cab near Catch Steakhouse, but when she didn't return home or show up to work the next morning, her family started to get worried. Jaclyn is from Minnesota, where all of her family still lives, but they immediately knew something was wrong after not being able to contact her, so they created a missing persons flyer and posted it on social media. But this is where things take a tragic and unexpected turn. A little after 2:30 p.m. on Friday, the New York Police Department were called to this luxury condo building in Manhattan after a maintenance worker found a body at the bottom of a garbage chute in the basement of the building. The worker was trying to take the garbage out when they discovered the gruesome scene. Unfortunately, the body was confirmed to be Jaclyn's, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. According to the NYPD, they do not suspect foul play, and no criminality is suspected at this time. The medical examiner is working to discover her cause and manner of death pending autopsy reports. But according to the preliminary investigation, Jaclyn's injuries indicate that she may have fallen down the garbage chute. What's strange is how Jaclyn ended up in this particular building, because she didn't live there, she lived in Brooklyn, and as of right now, it's unclear how she even gained access to the building. Jaclyn was officially last seen alone on surveillance footage around 11:45 p.m. the night she disappeared, stumbling down West 28th Street attempting to open up random doors along the way, until she eventually appears entering the condo building. The location of the condo building where she was found is less than 1 mile from Catch Steakhouse, where she was seen getting into that cab. The condo was also located on West 28th Street. As of right now, the circumstances surrounding Jaclyn's death are still a mystery, and she'd only been working for her company for a month.
This is Peter Scully, one of the worst pedophiles in world history. I'm about to tell you his story, but seriously guys, this one is incredibly disturbing. It's so dark, and viewer discretion is really advised for this video. So Peter Scully, he's still alive. He was from Australia, he had a family there, but he was engaging in criminal activities, and he eventually fled the country and moved to the Philippines. And this is where the darkness really began. While he was in Australia, Peter Scully started up an international child sex abuse ring. The things that were done to these kids are, I mean, I can't even talk about them here on TikTok, but he also started up a pay-per-view video service. And with these videos, he was producing CP, but one of the most extreme forms of CP that can possibly be produced. So how did all this happen? Well, when he was out living in the Philippines, Peter Scully had 2 Filipina girlfriends. They would go out to the streets, they would find kids that needed money or looked impoverished, they would bring them back to the house they shared with Peter, and the things that went on afterwards are literally unspeakable. Remember, like I mentioned before, Peter was the head of an international ring of people that enjoyed the abuse of kids, and he provided videos for these clients. But his most infamous video was titled Daisy's Destruction. This video that he produced was so extreme, so hardcore, that people on the internet, when they heard about what happened in the video, literally thought that it was an urban legend, and they thought that there was no way this could be real. This is an actual screenshot of the beginning of the video. This is a screenshot from the very beginning of the video. In the video, 3 young girls are repeatedly tortured for hours and hours on end by Peter Scully and his 2 girlfriends from the Philippines. They are beaten, they are sexually abused. I mean, I can't even describe, like I said on TikTok, some of the things that happened in this video. An 18-month-old Daisy. Now, keep in mind that all of this was on camera. That's the most disturbing part of this. One of Peter's victims actually ended up dying. They were buried in his house. And this sick individual literally sold that video footage across the world. And what's even more disturbing is that there were lots of people willing to pay to see that video. I'm not kidding. People were paying $10,000 to view this video. That is absolute insanity that there are people that sick out there in the world. And this is only the beginning of the crimes that this guy carried out. Some of the other stuff that we're going to touch on is absolutely disgusting. It's just horrific. And the story of how Peter Scully was eventually identified and arrested is extremely captivating. I'm going to run out of time here on this video, but if you want to see a part 2, let me know below. This story is far from over.